So I went to the Tourette clinic a few weeks ago, as I normally do every 6 months. I just check in just to see if there's any changes in my symptoms or if we need to adjust the way we manage the Tourette syndrome and the comorbidities, because, well, Tourette does not come by itself typically. So I walk in the office with my support animal, Maddie, who is a beautiful Shepherd Retriever mix. Get to the reception. Reception's not there. So I walk back to the waiting area where a man and a woman are sitting. Of course, as I'm walking back, the woman makes eye contact with me, smiles at me because, well, I'm traveling with a beautiful dog. She smiles at the dog, and I just wound up sitting beside her just because there was nowhere else to sit. I was not trying to make a friend or anything. So Maddie's lying down at my feet, and the woman is flirting with Maddie, and Maddie's flirting back with the woman, as dogs and humans typically do. So that little routine went for a couple minutes until I had a tick. Now, I don't remember what the tick was, but just like that, the woman stopped interacting with Maddie. She locks me out with her body language, and I swear I could feel glacial air coming from over there, just like that. And right there, I realized that this reaction of disgust is probably based on the information she received. And she's probably been told that all those therapies are going to stop the urge to tick. All those medications are going to make Tourette go away. And by the way, Tourette is a childhood disorder, and your child will outgrow it. And, here I am, 45-year-old adult, right beside her, contradicting everything she thinks she knows about Tourette syndrome. And in that moment, also, I realized that, you know what, pretty much every other time that I sit down in that office or that I sit down in that waiting area, every other time I get that kind of reaction. I sit down beside a parent who reacts to my ticking. So, we'll sit down, be very civil because, I might look well put together or whatever. I sit down and everything's fine until I tick. So, my first question is, because this has happened to me more than once in that same office, something tells me I'm not the only one. So, Touretters, my first question, Touretters, has this happened to you? And if so, how have you reacted? Second thing that came to mind, for the parent of a Tourettic child to have such a strong reaction of disgust, it tells me that there's a lot of misinformation and myths out there that are generated by the very Tourette clinics that are supposed to look after us. So if that, for all I know, I don't know, I hope that's not the case, but, all the offices are like, oh, you know what, let's put an adult Touretter with the parent of a Tourettic child in the same waiting room and see what happens. Oh. No, I hope they're not that savage, but something like that should be considered a little better. So yeah, so I realized that a lot of the myths and misinformation and what parents will believe, all that information comes from their first line of interaction, which is usually the medical community. So my question is, how can we get better information out there? Because that reaction of disgust should not be happening. Regardless, it's normal to have a reaction, but to have such a strong reaction, especially if you are living with a Touretter, it's probably not healthy for the parent or for the Tourettic child that's probably on the receiving end of a very similar kind of reaction on a daily basis. Anyway, I guess my question is, how can we get better information out there? How can we open that dialogue between adults who are able to articulate the experience better than a child would, from a firsthand, from within, the brain, rather than a parent going like, oh, this is what it does. Between the medical community and Tourettic adults, there really should be open lines of communications.